All right. That was fun. YouTube streaming, man. YouTube streaming. We're here this time. I was just running tests, and normally when I start a stream up, it's like it goes to YouTube, and then I have to actually hit start stream. So I started the stream on my end, and then I assumed it wouldn't go out to everybody. It did. Like 200 of you guys hopped in, which is sweet. But you saw 24 seconds of me staring at my computer not knowing I was live, so that was probably fun. But we're here now. This is kind of an impulsive stream because there's actually not going to be a podcast this week because I'm going on the Strong Opinion Sports show this week with Zach. I just recorded that with him for about 2 hours, so that's going to be the podcast this week, and then he's actually going to come onto the channel next week, so we're doing a little back-to-back joint podcasting action. But I do have some mailbag questions, and I thought it'd be fun to just go live for a minute here. I do want to do a quick announcement that I am live on Twitter. So let's see, you gotta find the stream link. So let's see. There we go. Don't mind me tweeting. Does he have a... All right, I don't know his handle, but... This is why I wanted to have a little preparation menu, YouTube. How's everyone doing? Just waiting on our heels for Odell news? Dude, if Odell signs during this show, I'm going to go nuts. Oh, I didn't put anything in this coffee either. Dang it. We're drinking it black. YouTube for a mailbag live stream. Come chill. All right. How we doing? Okay, so yeah, I just wanted to do the Patreon mailbag questions. Am I even going anymore? Yeah. I'm not used to doing YouTube streaming. It's different than Twitch, that's for sure. Odell to the Jets. Yeah, that's what we all want. Is another talented player wasted away in New York. He'd get his revenge on the Giants, I guess. So I'm going to go ahead and start with all of my Patreon mailbag questions. And then any comments in the question as we go. So these were submitted on patreon.com/thatfranchiseguy by my amazing patrons who help support this channel and the show. This normally would be at the end of our podcast every week, but doing a little bit different this week, mixing things up, doing a little live stream action. We got a super chat from Tanner. Thank you, Tanner. As a Ravens fan, every game this year has been like game of the year candidate. Can't wait to see them play teams like the the Packers, Steelers, and Browns. Yeah, dude, the Ravens have been super fun because they just like get into these end of game moments where they just say, "All right, Lamar, get us out of trouble," and he's been pulling it off, which has been so fun to see. That's I think the biggest like reason for why you might pick Lamar for MVP, because he's had to really do some special stuff at the end of the game. Thank you, Green Zone, fresh cut. My future mother-in-law actually gave it to me. Good job on the haircut. But our first mailbag question, again, these are from Patreon. Any super chats, I will definitely be answering while we're live here. From Nicholas, what is the least valuable position in the NFL? Offense, defense only. So not going to count like fullback. I mean, running back's the obvious answer there. I think running back is by far the least valuable of any real position, just because there's so many options at the position. It's so dependent on the blocking in front. It's not that hard to find a running back in the draft. So that's a pretty easy answer. But if we wanted to go beyond running back, I think I would say linebacker, like off-ball linebacker, because it's tough because like the Fred Warners of the world, I do think make a massive difference, but those guys are kind of outliers to all linebackers. You know, I think linebacker is a very high variance position from week to week. You can create splash plays at that position, but you might go, even from the better linebackers, you might go another 4 weeks before they have an impactful play. And in that time, most of the best linebackers are going to be spending a lot of time guessing the wrong lane, getting beat in coverage. It's probably the hardest position to consistently play at a high level in the NFL for a lot of different reasons. But I think linebacker might be next for me behind running back. But there's an offense and a defense for you. Okay, from Josh, is Eric Bieniemy still in the running as one of the more desired coaches for next season? So as I mentioned, I'm going to be on the Strong Opinion Sports show this week. Really looking forward to sharing the conversation I had with Zach this week. We actually get into Eric Bieniemy a little bit, but what I said in that talk with Zach is that he's definitely stock down this year, Eric Bieniemy. I think that there was already a case kind of built against him as far as what does he truly do for the Chiefs, as far as they've got these great weapons. They've got Andy Reid there. Sorry, I'm just going to lower the volume on the music just a little bit. But it was very difficult to kind of separate what Eric Bieniemy brought to the table from having Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, who's probably the easiest weapon to scheme up in the league, Travis Kelce underneath doing what he does, and Andy Reid being kind of the offensive guru. It was already tough to kind of say, okay, Eric Bieniemy is really boosting this thing. But now this year, seeing the team really struggle and not really adjusting, not kind of figuring out what's broken, I still think Bieniemy's an attractive head coach candidate. But I will say that I would say it's just whatever amount of stock down you want to attribute to that, that's up for, subjectivity. But I don't think it's been a very good year for Eric Bieniemy, which kind of makes it a bummer that he wasn't able to get a job last year. This is a super chat. Thank you, Fire Ice. Getting through my Jordan Love film breakdown, I have to ask, what traits do you think QBs can improve on, i.e. accuracy processing? It feels like inaccurate guys remain inaccurate. That's typically been the case throughout time, is that inaccuracy is the one trait. Because I think everything else you do tend to see developing, especially processing is the big one. I think when you look at Jordan Love's game, he is going to have to develop his blitz recognition, which I would slot in with processing. That's definitely the number one trait that you expect to develop over time, because that just comes with experience, watching film, having all of the answers to the test. It's quite literally like preparing for a math test. But yeah, accuracy over time has shown to be something that doesn't really develop, but I will say that there's new data on that. There's players that have developed their accuracy over time, most recently Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, and Lamar Jackson. All guys that have worked with these quarterback specialists, really work on their mechanics. I do think accuracy is something that can be developed if you are really adamant about it. I think there's always a certain kind of uncoachable trait related to accuracy, but I do think there's a lot that you can do to improve your accuracy. So, and that's been supported by the development of some of these guys like Hurts and those guys I just mentioned. So the one thing that I think is the hardest, honestly, at this point, because I do think accuracy can be developed. I think the one thing that's the hardest for these quarterbacks to develop over time is that natural kind of pocket presence balance with like play extension. What I always say is when and how to sense pressure and use your feet to manipulate the pocket to extend plays. That to me is kind of the hardest thing for players to develop, but even then, you occasionally see players add that to their game. I think Dak this year has had much improved sense in the pocket. So I think I don't think you ever want to say that he'll never get better at anything. I think we've seen examples of different quarterbacks developing in traits that you would traditionally say can't be developed. Some might be easier than others, though. So that's a really good question. I enjoyed answering that one. Thank you, Fierce, for the super chat. Okay, from Otter. Who would win in a race? Prime Devin Hester or Tyreek Hill? Probably Tyreek Hill. I don't know if it's that close. But, yeah, I'm going to go with Tyreek Hill on that one. From Justin, not really a question, just a tip of advice for TFGO leagues. Okay, I'm going to have to revisit that one because something to do with kicking and Madden. We're going to save that for another time. But while I have you guys, make sure you go subscribe to TFG Plays on YouTube, where all of my Madden content is now living. Go check that out. I don't know if I have a link for that I could drop real quick. Here we go. Check it out. All right. From Finn. Hey, Mr. Franchise Guy. Just checking in to see how you're coping with DeGuara's first 200-yard game for the Packers. And then he puts in parentheses, writing this before the game, in all seriousness, who would I rather have the Packers taken than him? I remember screaming for a receiver at the time. I think the names that I was calling for would have been like Devin Duvernay, Darnell Mooney. Even later in the draft, I wanted like KJ Hill. I think that's where my mind was. But Josiah DeGuara's got a good opportunity to show some things this upcoming next few weeks leading through the season. I mean, Tanyan goes down, DeGuara's going to have to step up. I mean, he's shown some decent flashes, but he definitely is going to have to be that next man up for Green Bay. Okay, from Austin, am I still in on the whole Tepper rule regime in Carolina? Watching this team frustrates me, and I'm not sure if there is any positivity with this offense as long as Sam is the quarterback. It's been very discouraging for sure. They're one of the worst offenses in the league, like, period, which sucks. Tepper I still think is the right owner. I think he's got a good mentality. I still think the process of going for Sam Darnold was fine. If they knew heading into the draft that Justin Fields was going to be available to them, I think even them, they would say they probably would have done that differently, but there was no way to know. And then by the time the draft came around, they had already committed on Darnold. So that was definitely unfortunate. But I still think Tepper is the right owner. I think Rule is actually more of a defensive-minded guy, and his defense has been showing dramatic improvements. So, and I think Joe Brady is the right guy for their offense. The problem that they've had is they really butchered the offensive line really bad. They didn't spend any money on that in free agency. The answers that they thought they had weren't it. And we all kind of said it immediately when they signed, like, right out the gate in free agency. They signed, what's his name? He's so bad that I forget his name sometimes. The former Vikings center. But let me just pull up the old Our Lads here. Yeah, Pat Elflein. And then they signed, right after that, they signed Cam Irving, who's hurt now. It was just, like, what are you doing? Like, you got to fix this offensive line. You knew it coming in, and they didn't. So that's been a huge issue for them. I think Darnold's been, he's been poor. There's no doubt. But he also has not had a very good offensive line. And really, it's been just DJ Moore at receiver. Robbie Anderson looked good on paper coming into the year, but he has regressed all the way back to being, like, worse than he was before his breakout season last year. He offers almost nothing for that team. So I think the roster talent offensively is something they're really going to have to focus on, which isn't a surprise. They haven't really drafted at that. They drafted Terrace Marshall. You hope he works out long term, but they haven't really spent much offensively at all. It's been a lot of defense with their drafts and free agency as well. Okay, from Cody on Patreon, do I believe part of Green Bay's lack of success against Kansas City was an over-eagerness to evaluate Jordan Love from LaFleur? No, I don't think so. He says, as in calling too many passing plays for him, especially when the run game was having success. Honestly, I've seen people say that, why did they stop running? And I don't know. I think they were running the ball well in the first half. They missed the field goals. They stalled. And then in the second half, they were actually moving the ball pretty well offensively. Love throws the pick. And then they didn't get the ball back in the end. And the run game really wasn't working in the second half. I don't think that the game plan was bad because they wanted to evaluate Jordan Love. No, I think they did a couple things to protect Jordan Love. They could have done a little bit more to scheme open some different stuff. But I really think Jordan Love's inability to handle the blitz really hurt them offensively, and their offensive line really hurt them offensively. I don't think they had that bad of a game plan, honestly. I didn't walk away from that like, oh my God, the play calling here is just terrible. It was just the execution across the board was pretty bad. All right. We've got a mailbag question from Alex. With OBJ now being released, this is twice Kevin has had an issue with a big name wideout. Baker has had... I'm not sure if that's a typo or if I'm not thinking about who... Oh, Kevin Stefanski. Yeah, because he had an issue with Stephon Diggs. I got you. What is the issue that causes this wideout to ask for a trade or be released? Dude, I'm going to be completely honest. I have no idea what happened with Odell. I know there was some articles and stuff about what went on there when they he wasn't in the building. They told him not to show up. Then they were like, we're not going to release you. I literally have no idea what happened. So I'm really not comfortable commenting on that. I do think with Diggs, it was much more related to the philosophy of the Vikings, where they just straight up didn't pass the ball enough, and Diggs wanted to be in a high-volume offense. But honestly, with Odell Beckham, I have no idea if that's a Kevin Stefanski issue, an Odell Beckham issue, a Baker issue. I really, honestly, just don't know. So I don't really want to make any assumptions about that, what happened there. From Honk Boy, after a disappointing loss to the Pats, is Joe Brady or Matt Rule on the hot seat? I'm going to say no. We kind of discussed that earlier. I think that when they started 3-0, I said it at the time that the expectations were going to get out of control. And my God, has that aged correctly? I think you jump to 3-0, people are like, this team needs to compete for the division, they need to compete for the conference. That never should have been the expectation for the Panthers coming in. It should have been the defense. If they can show that Matt Rule is a great coach and these young guys can become superstars, that's great. You get a fair look at Sam Darnold that even myself as a Sam Darnold apologist was like, I don't know if this is going to work out. You hope it does. But no, I don't think they're on the hot seat. As far as Joe Brady goes, look, Joe Brady's a really good offensive coordinator. He's got nothing to work with right now. He's got DJ Moore, and that's it. He's got one of the worst offensive lines in football. He's got a quarterback that's just gifting the football to opponents. Not much of a run game to speak of. I'm definitely not selling Joe Brady after the little amount that he has to work with. All right, from Jake. That's more of a Madden question, so we'll skip over that for now. From Jaden, how many teams do you think are in front of the Steelers in the Rodgers sweepstakes? This is another thing I talk about with Zach, by the way. We actually have a lot of talk about the Packers and Rodgers and that stuff. But honestly, I think it's leaning towards Rodgers staying in Green Bay because his problem is, and always was, organizational philosophy. And I think that they're showing some pretty major changes in that department. And Rodgers has been kind of proved right about a lot of this stuff. He says, give me Randall Cobb. He's a big upgrade to the offense. He says we should stop promoting Joe Schmo from the practice squad. We should sign a Rasul Douglas. We should sign Whitney Merciless. Those guys have been good for the Packers and really helped that defense hang in there. So I think a little bit of it is the Packers maybe changing their mentality on this a little bit. We'll see if they can land Odell. But I think as long as Rodgers is happy with a little bit more aggressiveness from the front office, he doesn't have any issue with Green Bay, with Wisconsin, with the fans, with his teammates, with his coach. He loves LaFleur. So I think his best chance to win is to stay in Green Bay. I think he knows that. I don't think Green Bay would have too much of an issue just biting the bullet on Jordan Love at this point. Not necessarily that Love's performance the other day changes it that much, but it's not like Love came out and was like, oh my God, he's clearly the future. Like, as much as I defended Jordan Love, it's not like you know for sure that he's a franchise quarterback. When they drafted Love, Rodgers was coming off a down year, and they weren't sure if he was going to be in Green Bay for much longer. So I think this could turn into like a Jimmy Garoppolo, Tom Brady situation. So I would say it's most likely that he actually stays. But if there is a sweepstakes for Rodgers, I would say that Denver's still probably the favorite, even though they traded away Von Miller. I would say Pittsburgh probably second. There's not a ton of teams. I don't know if he would want to go to like Washington or Carolina. That would, to me, almost have to be like Green Bay forces him out and he doesn't have a ton of options. I could still see the Saints, but I think he probably stays in Green Bay at this point. Okay, from Luke. This may be a tough question to answer, but what do you think the next set of offensive innovations will be based on how the game is played today? If I had an answer for you on that question, I wouldn't be sitting here doing a live stream on YouTube. I'd be in the lab, working for an NFL team. I have so much respect for the offensive innovators in all coaching levels, but if I knew, I wouldn't be talking about football on YouTube. I'd be designing plays for quarterbacks. From Jacob, can you explain to me what is wrong with the Niners? I haven't seen every game, only about 4, including the Packers. They've had good line play on both sides. Has it been injuries, inconsistent QB play, bad DB play? Or has Shanahan just regressed as a coach? I mean, the cop-out answer here is yes. I think the loss of Robert Saleh has been a massive hit to the San Francisco 49ers. With all due respect to DeMeco Ryans, I don't think he's doing a very good job with that defense. They've had a ton of injuries in the secondary, and with Kittle being out for a while, I think Shanahan has had some issues. Any great offensive mind that has a scheme that's replicated around the league, teams are going to get better between the margins at defending what you do well, and I think Shanahan is in the process of developing a counterpunch. I think Jimmy Garoppolo's been wildly inconsistent. Jimmy's actually been okay some weeks and pretty bad other weeks. But it's just been a messy, ugly season for the Niners. But I think you ride the line, you stay true, you hope that you can fix some stuff as the season goes on and get healthy next year. From Jack, thoughts on Justin Fields through 9 weeks, and what does he need to do to develop to become an elite QB? Also, is he currently the second best QB in the NFC North behind Rodgers? I'm not quite ready to put him behind Cousins, even though a lot of people will be rushing to do that because Cousins is Kirk Cousins. Fields is a very splashy quarterback right now. You see the potential like every, 5 to 10 snaps. You see him dropping dimes, extending plays with his feet. It's not leading to a consistent brand of offense. I mean, even in that Steelers game, he came on late, but really wasn't good for the majority of that game. I don't know if that's entirely fair. I haven't gotten to fully review that game quite yet, but I do remember in the first half there was some sloppiness. So don't take too much weight into that. But on the season as a whole, it's been a lot of learning, and it's been good to see him get better against the blitz and throw with a little more anticipation. Continue to take good care of the football. I think this is pretty close to as much as you could have hoped to see from the Bears and Justin Fields this year. There was obviously a lot of expectations for him coming into the year, and I think you're seeing week-to-week development, which is a great sign, and you're seeing the flashes, and he's making less bad plays every week. So he's on the rise. I'm not putting him over Cousins yet, but you're definitely optimistic, man. I mean, at this point in time, it does look like they hit on Justin Fields as long as he continues to evolve, which all signs indicate that he will. From Devontae. Sorry for this. Okay, we got 2 questions. We can get them both. I'm in my early 20s and wasn't really paying attention to the league when Rodgers and Breeze won their 1 Super Bowl each. If they hadn't won those Super Bowls, how would they be different than players like Rivers, Stafford, and Ryan? Well, it's the consistency aspect. I mean, Stafford and Ryan, well, let's just say this. Rodgers and Breeze, whether or not they were winning Super Bowls, doesn't change the fact that year after year after year after year after year after year, we're playing like top 3 quarterbacks, regardless of how good their team was around them. I think both are viewed as quarterbacks that should have won more in their career. If you rip their ring away, I don't know how much that changes their career outlook. So that's the difference to me, is the consistent level of elite play throughout 10, 15 years that you're not getting with Stafford and Matt Ryan. Rivers is closer. I think Rivers and Breeze might have been viewed a little bit closer if Breeze never won. But even then, Breeze was just much more consistent than Rivers. From Adam. Oh, there's also a second part to that question. Hang on. Do you think, this is still from Devontae, do you think there is anything to say about there being 9 AFC teams with 5 wins and only 1 NFC team with 5 wins? Seems like the whole AFC is in the playoff picture, but the NFC is pretty top-loaded. Yeah, that's 100% true. The NFC is 5 teams that are all pretty close to each other in whatever order you want to rank them. And then the AFC is like this, half the conference is all kind of in this big muddy puddle. It makes for some good football in the AFC, some fascinating football, but it also leads to some pretty random, unexpected results. The AFC is incredibly deep, incredibly deep. I don't know if there's anything to that, any reason for why, but that's definitely the current status of the 2 conferences, because after those top 5 in the NFC, you start looking at really shaky teams like Minnesota, the Saints, the Panthers, the Falcons, the Seahawks. Those guys are not nearly on the same level as Chargers, Browns, Patriots, for example. Raiders, Bengals. All right, from Adam. Wondering your thoughts on the 53-man roster. Do I believe it's a good size, or should it be expanded? Do you think injuries would go down if there were more players available to play? Oh. I mean, how many practice injuries do you hear about? I feel like practice injuries are fairly fluky. I don't know. I don't think you need too much more than 53. I know like Sean Payton has said that he wants more than 53, but that's because Sean Payton would play 14 different receivers in a game that all have weird, unique skill sets if he could. I feel like it's a good size. I mean, from a player's perspective, like that, the more you add to the 53-man roster, the more money you're taking out of the pot for all the different players. So I think from a player perspective, it makes sense. I think the teams, I think it's a good number. I don't see a huge need to add more because you have the injured reserve. If you have injuries, you can fill in. And now especially with the injured reserve only being 3 weeks, you can easily get someone in there. I think that was a really good change that really stemmed from COVID. Was in the past, if someone got injured and you wanted to clear a roster spot, you had to sit them out for 9 weeks Now it's like if you've got a bad ankle, you're going to be out for 2 or 3 weeks. You can throw him on the IR, create a roster spot, and get that guy back pretty quickly. So, no, I don't think you need more than 53. From Eric, which are the 5 offenses this year that are the most hardcore wide zone? Well, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but hey, there's Adam in the chat. Thanks for the question. I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I could very well be wrong here. I would assume Tennessee and Atlanta are at the top. So San Francisco, Green Bay, and Cleveland, all of those run games are rooted in the wide zone stuff, but I would say those 3 teams that are Shanahan teams really do a good job of mixing in gap runs, power and trap and different stuff. So I would say they're probably still in the top half, but not in the top 3 or 4 teams. I would guess Minnesota would be up there. And then probably, the Rams, I would have to check. I know they're switching to even more shotgun this year, so they probably aren't. But I would guess, off the top of my head, Tennessee, Minnesota, and Atlanta are the heaviest wide zone runs. But it would be really interesting to compare that if anyone has the numbers on that. From Matthew, by the end of the season, who do you think will officially establish themselves as the best team in the AFC? Gun to my head, I hate to say this, I'm going to say the Kansas City Chiefs. Maybe it's the optimist in me, but I feel like the defense, moving Chris Jones back to defensive tackle, getting the secondary healthy, playing Willie Gay more, what they got to do is bench Daniel Sorensen. They pitch a shutout against Green Bay if they bench Daniel Sorensen. Granted, there was some missed kicks and stuff, but gun to my head, I say Kansas City probably still wins the AFC. I don't feel even 20% confident in that because I think the Bills are the most well-rounded, deep, talented team in the league. I would be worried about Josh Allen laying a stinker any given week. Tennessee, I don't know if their roster talent is necessarily up there, but they're possibly the best. Are they better coached than Buffalo? I don't know, but they kind of have an identity and a style of winning that's very consistent. I think Cleveland has a chance to get in there. If they get healthy and Baker continues to play well without Odell, that could get really interesting. I don't know if the Chargers have the potential to be the best team in the AFC this year. I'm still worried about some of their more glaring weaknesses. Lack of a run game, lack of a right tackle, lack of anyone in their front 7 outside of Joey Bosa. But the Chargers are still extremely explosive and fun. So it's really tough. And Baltimore. I wish Baltimore's defense was a little better, but and maybe wish Lamar was a little more stable quarter to quarter. But when he turns it on late in games, Baltimore's probably the best team in the AFC when he's on. It's really hard. The AFC is incredibly difficult to predict this year. We got a couple super chats. Thank you from the Love Doctor 69 all day. What a name right there. Has social media made people too quickly to judge? Feels like if Peyton Manning had his rookie year when Twitter was around, people would say he was a bust. Oh, man. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if Trevor Lawrence comes out and throws, 30+ interceptions? Yeah, Trevor Lawrence wouldn't survive. Even if Trevor Lawrence, it would take him years to reestablish himself. Granted, Peyton Manning's rookie season is a significant outlier. Most of the rookies that have that year of throwing that many picks don't turn it around. But yeah, people are very quickly to judge and very slow to forgive, I would say, when it comes to quarterbacks. From Little Known Perfection, super chat here. I'm terrified that when the Vikes fire Zimmer, they get rid of Spielman too. I really don't know if there's a better GM on the market. Yeah, Spielman's sweet, man. I really like Spielman. It's a bummer that they had a hard time finding a quarterback, or at least, Kirk Cousins was their answer. Spielman's a really good scout. He's a great dude. He knows his stuff. I would not be in a rush to move on from Spielman if I was the Vikes. But it does seem like Zimmer will be on the way out. What I feel like will happen is Zimmer will be asked to leave, and then next year it'll be Kirk and Spielman and a new coach. And then if that regime will have a short leash, and then maybe they completely blow it up a year or two after that, depending on how the new head coach looks. Vikes are in such a frustrating window right now. Tanner asks, what happened with Ed Oliver? I remember him coming out of college. Everyone was super high on him. However, in the NFL, he's not been as explosive. Oliver's not a bad player. I think what we're seeing with Ed Oliver is the hope was that he would really put on more play strength and play something like Aaron Donald is able to play at 280 pounds, because when you are 280 pounds and you're asked to play defensive tackle, that's really light. And he really struggles with that physical aspect of the game at times. He can get blown off the ball, give up ground, have a hard time finding the play. He has definitely been solid as a pass rusher. He hasn't been that. You know what he is he's kind of somewhere in between Solomon Thomas, who is a complete bust, trying to be the next Aaron Donald, and Aaron Donald, who's the best defensive tackle in football. It kind of puts him right in the middle, where he's a good player. Probably, it's hard to even say totally overdrafted, because he wasn't picked until the 8th pick. But I did think he was a blue chip prospect in that class. And I think you could point to almost a little bit of a lack of creativity with how he's used. I wouldn't mind to see him play on the edge a little bit like the Rams do with Aaron Donald. Stunt him a little bit better. I really like McDermott, but they play it pretty simplified front there, and I wouldn't mind to see them get a little bit more creative with Oliver. But again, he's not a bust. He's really not a bust. He's a fine player. He's still, only 23, 24 years old? So he's been fine. He has disappointed a little bit. All right, back to the Patreon mailbag here. Is this a question? No, just a nice message from Zeke, not the running back. From Edward Green, can you say what good things Chiefs safety Sorensen does? No. I can't explain it. I can't explain what the Chiefs staff is doing. It's one of the more mind-boggling NFL decisions being made right now, is the fact that Daniel Sorensen is still out there getting significant playing time. He's not starting anymore. He's only getting about 20, 25, but it's that's my only impression on Daniel Sorensen. I saw someone tagged me on it on Twitter. I don't know if whoever that was is in the chat here, but there's a graph that you put side by side. It's Chiefs points allowed and Daniel Sorensen snaps, and it is almost an identical correlation between when Sorensen plays, the Chiefs give up more points. It's pretty funny. There's obviously more to it, but there's not that much more to it. I mean, he's been that bad. Okay, from Jack, what do you think about teams putting their best wide receiver in the slot? I personally think it lets them work better and let them get open over the middle of the field. Guys like Adams, Hill, Chase, I feel like would benefit from this. It really depends on the receiver, I think the good teams put those types of players in both spots. It also kind of depends, like, Tyler Boyd's on the Bengals. So the only time you're really going to want Jamar Chase in the slot is if you've got, double on both sides. So you have two slot receivers. Because you're not gonna stick Boyd outside and put Chase inside. That just doesn't make sense. But for the most part, teams do. If we just pull up, like, let's look at Hill and Adams. I bet they play 30% of their snaps from the slot. I think that's a good number. I mean, at some point you do got to put them outside so you can stack receivers and hit deep balls on the outside. I mean, that's the easiest place to go deep is outside the numbers. So you still want those guys playing out there, but let's just do a little experiment. But like DK Metcalf, for example, probably don't want to put him in the slot because his skill set is just stick him outside and let him work that route tree on the outside. So it really just does depend on the receiver. But let's do a little experiment here. So Devontae Adams, yeah, he's played about a quarter of his snaps from the slot. 118 from the slot, 311 out wide. Tyreek Hill has played he's actually played more in the slot, 266 versus 237. So, yeah, I mean, your thinking, I think, is very consistent with how most teams use their number one receivers. From Connor, and let's just do DK just to have some fun. Let's see how much he's played from the slot. So he's much, much more outside. 76 snaps from the slot, 301 snaps out wide. So he's more like 15, somewhere between 15 and 20% there, if my math's right. Okay, from Connor, we got a couple more mailbag questions. I'll do any more super chats you guys are generous enough to put in here before we get out of here. From Connor Lee, what's up, Connor? I know you're hanging out in the chat somewhere. Why does the Super Bowl loser almost always fall off the following season? Ironically, I talk about this with Zach on the podcast. That's the Super Bowl hangover crutch. I think there is a more tangible reason to that over time. Typically, whether you win or lose the Super Bowl, a lot of those teams fall off because they get put on a pedestal, rightfully speaking, but then the next year hits and players have left for free agency, players regress, players get injured, and it appears to be a Super Bowl hangover. I think that applies to winners and losers of the Super Bowl. But, for example, this year in the Chiefs' case, my explanation for that actually is that they overreacted to the reason they lost the Super Bowl, in that they spent every single resource they possibly could on offensive line, because that's, in their mind, why they lost the Super Bowl. And then they forgot, we don't have a number two receiver. We don't have a backup running back. Our defense is incredibly thin. And now all of a sudden these problems are being revealed when in reality they didn't need to add two entire offensive lines worth of players to their roster. They probably could have made about half the amount of moves as they did on that side of the ball. From Josh, what do you think is the best way for the Panthers to move forward at QB now that Darnold is out for a while? So I think this actually helps them a little bit that Darnold's going to miss like 3 weeks, because you can get an honest look at PJ Walker, who's got like a chance, right? Not a good chance, but you never know. PJ Walker could come out and be really fun and be good enough at least where you just kind of let the defense continue to get better, hopefully figure out some of their offensive line problems. Maybe I think Terrace Marshall's actually injured right now, but maybe you integrate him a little bit more and you understand that, okay, we weren't going to win the Super Bowl this year. Like, probably we never should have had those expectations. But get a look at PJ Walker and Darnold and maybe head into next year and let that fully play out. Because, I haven't gotten a great look at the upcoming quarterback class, and I'm definitely not making any firm takes here. From what I've seen extremely loosely, and I'm talking about out of the corner of my eye, I catch it's third down and Sam Howell happens to be on the screen, or I'm catching a Malik Willis play or something. Like, extremely limited observation of this quarterback class. But from what I'm hearing and what I've seen, I just honestly don't know. Even if it is like Malik Willis or the Ole Miss kid, I don't know if those guys are going to be any better than Sam Darnold. We'll obviously get into that stuff during the draft season, which I'm stoked for. But, if you roll into next year with J.C. Horn coming back healthy, this young defense getting better, you sign an offensive lineman, maybe you can attract a Teron Armstead or make a trade like that. Maybe go get an Andre Dillard or whatever it is. You improve the offensive line, you come back with a potentially elite defense. Another year of getting Terrace Marshall going. You come in next year, maybe you sign like a Mariota, and you say, look, we're going to go with Darnold, who we have to pay $20 million next year either way. Mariota, let those guys compete. PJ Walker, maybe as a third. And you let it ride. It's not ideal, but that's to me the approach I would have, unless you fall in love with one of these quarterbacks, and then you go get the guy. I just don't know if that's going to happen. The other alternative is Deshaun Watson, which I don't know. I don't know if the Panthers have enough to offer compared to Miami, who seems all in on getting Deshaun Watson. So I feel like they're going to just get outpriced by the Miami Dolphins. Got a couple more super chats here. You guys are keeping me around. So from Tommy, thank you. Hello from Germany. Hello. My dad's actually flying out to Germany like tomorrow, I think. Do I think Bill Belichick will someday learn the modern NFL and put more emphasis on New England offense? Well, probably not, because he's not going to be around that much longer. I feel like he might as well keep coaching with his current coaching style. He's 70 years old. And as soon as Kraft, either it works or Kraft says it's time for us to move on. I don't think Bill Belichick's going to be doing a whole lot of changing in his philosophy. He is smart enough, though, to open up the offense more. He is smart enough to know, like, okay, Mac Jones would benefit from another receiver. That's why they're making such a strong push for Odell Beckham. Like, they're not super stupid. They're not stupid at all. But I don't think Bill Belichick is ever going to be like, screw my defense. We don't need anything on that side of the ball. Let's just go all in on offense. I don't think that's ever going to happen. From Sick Nick, what other podcasts or YouTube channels do I listen to? My go-to rotation every week is the Athletic Football Show with Robert Mays, who's he's definitely my favorite NFL analyst. He does that with Nate Tice. They run a great ship for the Athletic. And then I always listen to the PFF podcast, the main NFL show with Sam and Steve, who do a great job. And then I enjoy John Middlecoff's show. He's super entertaining. I just enjoy his perspective. He worked in the league for a while, and he's just got this kind of like, I'm going to say whatever the F I want and not apologize about it, that I like about him. He's into finance and stuff too. So I like John Middlecoff. 3 and Out podcast is a part of my rotation. And that's about as much as I get to throughout the week. But, I mean, I'll tell you all the ones I'm subscribed to real quick, because I do like, I kind of bounce around outside of those first 2 that I said. But let's see here. My library, podcasts. Okay, so these are all of the podcasts I'm subscribed to on Spotify right now. There's the Too High podcast with Seth Galina and Deontay Lee. I've only listened to the 1 episode of that, but they're very like scheme, X's and O's. NFL Explained, which talks a little bit of NFL history. PFF NFL podcast. Norse Code with our buddy Arif, really good Vikings podcast, athletic football show. I subscribe to the Knockback Retro and Nostalgia podcast, which is a lot of video games and movies and stuff when I don't want football. Bootleg, of course. Oh, I gotta shout out Bootleg with Brett and EJ. They're great. They're busy guys, so they only get. I guess they've been a little more consistent recently, but they don't always post every week. Strong Opinion Sports, of course. Zach Schaumler. I'll be on that podcast tomorrow, by the way, starting at 6 a.m. Tailgate. Got to shout out the Tailgate guys. That's PFF with Austin Gale and Mike Renner. Only a few more here. PFF Forecast, also a good one for the gamblers out there. And then I got Around the NFL is a good podcast for more of a casual. I enjoy Around the NFL because they're very entertaining and they know their stuff, but they have more of that like lighthearted. They're not like heavy into the X's and O's and debating stuff. They just kind of cover the game and have fun and really good dudes. So Around the NFL, 3 and Out with John Middlecoff that I talked about, and that's it. Okay, we've got super chat from Tanner here. Who do I think the next Chiefs OC will be? Well, I think Eric Bieniemy is going to be there for a while, I think. I don't see Bieniemy getting a job after what they've done this year, personally. But they'll probably promote from within. That's usually what you see with when you have the kind of offensive guru or defensive guru is the head coach. Yeah, Ringer NFL show is also really good. Matthias right there said that. I thought, did I skip over that? I thought I was followed that, but I don't know what happened there. But yeah, who's the? I can picture him. I can't think of his name right now. Got to host that. Okay, from Stash here, we got a super chat. I think the Lions should not pick a QB this year. Too many other things to fix and no great generational QB prospect. Yeah, I think that could really set the tone for the draft, too, because you could take Thibodeau or Stingley, which are both needs for them, really elevate that defense. You can still grab a guy, most likely, and again, my draft takes at this point are complete spitballing, and don't hold me to anything I say about the draft right now. We're only a couple months away from actually having good takes on that, but from what it sounds like is you can grab a guy, if you pass on Willis or Corral, you can take, Howell or Strong or whatever the order is here. These guys all seem to be in this cluster. We don't know, right? We've learned at this point, you never know for sure with these quarterbacks. You can have a good idea, but if you've got these guys in a cluster, kick the can down the road a little bit. Take them in the second round, and then you're not locked into the guy either. If he's bad after a year, you can draft a guy in the first round. So at least you tried. That's probably what I would do if I was Detroit. And you have Goff. Man, you guys are keeping me around here. I'll stay as long as these super chats keep coming. I appreciate you guys, Tanner and Stash. Would I say Matt Ryan is a top 15 MVP candidate so far this year? No, I wouldn't say that. He's been solid, though. I mean, he's been probably about the 12th or 13th best quarterback. I don't know. I mean, I feel like his team isn't good enough to be an MVP candidate. Like, I'd rather put Myles Garrett ahead of Matt Ryan, for example. And then, ironically, Tanner just asked, who's more deserving of MVP, Kupp or Garrett? Definitely Garrett. I love Kupp, but what Garrett does is more unique and special and impactful, I would say. I mean, Kupp's been awesome. He's putting up unbelievable numbers. But I think a lot of that is volume and scheme, and he's also great on top of that. I think Myles Garrett's just like single-handedly demolishing game plans. Myles Garrett is... I have so many good things that I wish that I want to say about Myles Garrett that would just take me forever. So I think that's going to be everything. I guess I'll refresh the Patreon mailbag here and make sure. Oh, Patreon coming in during the show. We got some more. From Brandon, do I think this pattern with the Raiders off the field this year is just a bunch of really bad coincidence? Or is this a culture in Las Vegas thing? I mean, it's certainly possible that being located in Las Vegas is a problem for these guys off the field. There's not exactly the best characters that these guys are going to be meeting in Las Vegas, in that, like if you're an athlete in Las Vegas, just think of like the people you're going to be meeting, the parties you're going to be going to. It's going to be a lot of drinking, a lot of schmoozing, a lot of partying late. It's possible that that's going to be a problem for Las Vegas over time. It's definitely too early to say that, but it's got to be on your radar at this point if you're Las Vegas, is that maybe they need to take a look at their culture and make sure that they are, I guess, protecting these guys off the field. Tommy with a super chat. Thank you, Tommy. Which franchise would I like to be the GM of? Would I priority the draft or trades? I'd have a healthy balance, I think. I think you got to have a balance of win now and draft and develop. But, I mean, where I live is a big part of where I'd like to be a GM. So if I could be a GM in Chicago or Seattle, maybe Dallas. There's certain places I'd rather live over others. Minneapolis, be a GM of the Vikes. Be nice if I had a quarterback, LA Chargers. Can I go build a team around Justin Herbert for the next 20 years? That'd be nice. I would say quarterback and location would be my most... I'd probably say that the LA Chargers would be my ideal general manager location there. From Patrick, Patreon mailbag question here. Can I think of any reason for Washington fan to be optimistic about the rest of the season? No. Sorry. Season's done. You don't have a quarterback of the future. You don't know if your coach is going to be there. It's rough, man. I'm sorry. From Chase, hope this is where I submit mailbag questions. Yes, it is. Good job. Do it just like that. Lead with mailbag questions if you can. What team is the most exciting for the draft season as of week 9? The Eagles. Eagles maybe need a quarterback. We'll see. But they have 3 first-round picks. They stole the Dolphins' first-round pick. Man, they're going to have potentially 2 top 10 picks and another good pick probably from the Colts. The Eagles are going to dominate the mock draft cycle this year, so get used to a lot of Eagles fans in those comment sections, or at least prepare for them. We got a super chat from Hayden. Who will be the Saints' next quarterback? Who will be the Saints' quarterback next year? I think Jameis. I think Jameis will be back. I think he earned that opportunity. Just trying to come up with anything else. I mean, maybe Rodgers, but I think Jameis. He's going to be cheap again. Another super chat from the Love Doctor. Dolphins are the worst run organization, yes or no? They're very poorly run. I'm going to say no because I think from a coaching perspective, they're well run with Flores, though I have some serious questions about the 2 offensive coordinator thing. That makes no sense to me. I think their operation is good, but their direction is very poor, and I think Chris Greer probably needs to go. He has butchered this rebuild. I think someone else deserves an opportunity after they basically wasted every first-round pick that they got for trading away good players in Laramie Tunsil and Minka Fitzpatrick. Dang, the super chats just keep coming. Top 3 favorite football movies. Draft Day, number 1. Don't at me. Love Draft Day. Longest Yard, number 2. And how about a shout-out to is it the Ernie Davis movie? I can't remember the name of the movie. This is called 44. Is that what it is? There's an Ernie Davis movie. It's very good. So those are my top 3. Who's the next Patriots head coach after Bill Belichick is gone? That's really hard to say because I think Bill's going to be around for another 4 or 5 years. So I really have no idea. I think it's fascinating to entertain the idea of his son. Here is a hot take that I will say. One of the McCourty brothers, next head coach of the Patriots. I think either one, Devin or Jason, I don't know exactly, but I know their football IQ is through the roof. I could see Bill hiring one or both as a defensive coordinator or a position coach, climbs to defense coordinator, and then replaces Bill as head coach. So there's a take, one of the McCourty twins. From Tanner, what Super Bowl would you love to see this year? Thank you, Tommy. The Express is the name of the Ernie Davis movie. It is very good. I totally forgot that movie existed, but it popped right back in my mind because I used to love that movie. So, who would I want to see in the Super Bowl? I mean, I want to see Aaron Rodgers in another Super Bowl. Not going to apologize about that one. But I also want to see Matthew Stafford get one. So I'd say Rams or Packers versus. I kind of want the Chiefs to turn it around in a weird way, just because it'd be amazing. But I think Browns Packers is who I'd want to see, or Chargers Packers would be who I would personally want to see. From John LaDuca, what should the Niners do in the offseason to turn things around? Unfortunately, I think they just kind of ride the wave here. Hope the coaching staff figures it out. Hope Trey Lance is good. Hope the defense can stay healthy. I do think you might think about a different defensive coordinator, making some changes on that side of the ball, but not a lot of cap space, not a lot of draft capital. You really got to go with the roster that you have for the most part. There's little moves you can make here and there, maybe a new corner here, new safety there, little stuff. But for the most part, this is the team they're going to have. You keep Kyle Shanahan and say, figure it out this year or else. From Jose, watching live at the moment, want to mention that with the addition of Zach Kerr to the Cardinals, also with Hudson back in the lineup, does that help the Cardinals being less squishy? Yeah, totally. When did they get Zach Kerr? Did the Niners release him? I love Zach Kerr. That's a great signing for the Cardinals. Back where he kind of broke out in a little bit of a way, and yeah, getting Hudson back helps. Yeah, that's a huge boost. You don't want that Cardinals defense or offense to get back to being squishy, and those are some big pieces of meat to put in the middle of those lines. All right, barring any more super chats, this is going to be our last question here. Do the Giants really need to blow it up? I feel like we have some good pieces, just a better right tackle and a true edge, right? Ooh, man. The Giants. The problem is, I don't see the upside on the current roster, and it just always comes back to Daniel Jones for me. But you can move on from Daniel Jones without blowing things up, right? What if they spend their second round pick on a quarterback, or even their first round pick from the Bears? What if they add another quarterback and say, look, if we can figure out a quarterback here, we got to find some small upgrades to the offensive line. And then maybe they can sign an edge rusher. I don't know who that would be. Azeez looks pretty good, though. But you're not wrong. The Giants aren't that far away, but it just keeps coming back to quarterback. So I guess it depends on your definition of blow it all up. I think quarterback and offensive coordinator long-term need to be better. But I guess that's not a full blow it up. I think Joe Judge can salvage his career if they can just be better offensively. From Hayden, why do I think Calvin Ridley has had a down year? I feel like that's kind of obvious. He's dealing with a lot of stuff off the field, and I don't know what's going on. I'm not going to jump to conclusions, but clearly there's a lot going on in Calvin Ridley's life, whether it's mental health or family issues or what, I don't know. But clearly off the field is getting to Calvin Ridley on and off the field. So that's my answer there. From Tanner, do I think Russ leaves Seattle after this year? No, I really don't. All right, that is gonna do it. Thank you everybody for the super chats. Amazing, thank you. This was fun. I think I'd like to do this more often. This was sweet. It was a good conversation, very productive. I figured out how to stream on YouTube again after I dropped a fake stream. So sorry for the confusion on that. I am going to upload this audio version to the podcast this week, but this is going to act as the podcast because I'm going to be on the Strong Opinion Sports podcast tomorrow with Zach. So check out his YouTube channel. Just go to Strong Opinion Sports. 2-hour conversation. Really fun talk I had with Zach, and he's going to be coming on next week for the podcast as well. So thank you, everybody, for making this show, literally, your questions made this a great stream. So I appreciate everybody, and enjoy the rest of your night. I will have Studs and Duds up on Friday and picks on Patreon tomorrow. Bengals rebuild, recording an episode tonight up on TFG Plays. Make sure you guys are following over on my second account for all of my Madden content. And voila, peace out. Thank you, everybody.